probably been using this word research for like, I don't know, fifth grade maybe was the first time I had to write a research paper, and I just like copied out of. We had real encyclopedias then, not Wikipedia. And I don't know, fifth grade I did something about whales or sharks or something like that. I don't remember, but it was totally just copying, right? And I think for most people, going all the way through from K through 12, and even in college, nobody ever stopped to say that that's not actually what research is and explain what it is. All we're doing, the whole purpose of like research methods to be a social science researcher is to take what other people have done and then you design a study that fits into the body of work of other people. So, what's the last thing we did? Poverty and no diplomas. Certainly there's a ton of people who have written about poverty and people without diplomas and what this means of different ethnicities and genders. If we had taken that data, we probably could have formulated into what is happening here in Miami. We have all this theory going on about what the gender bias, racial biases, what poverty means, and here in Miami we gather data and we can put it into the context of what everybody else has been saying when they write. So in Module 1, somewhere in here I wrote down, right, so these sections are all that happens in research. When you publish anything, it's going to have an abstract, a lit review, methods, data, and conclusion. It might not be written in the same exact way, but it's doing the same things. In that, well, the abstract is always going to say the abstract. And it's going to be about like a half a page at the most of what happens in whatever article it is. The lit review might be written, when you read an article, it might say background, it might say introduction, it might have multiple things that they write about, and it'll be like background on this part of it, background on that. But all of that is lit review, a review of what other people have written. So anything, when you read an article, anything that is coming from what somebody else wrote is being formulated into like their theoretical framework of what it is that other people have said about this topic. For most of our lives, all we've ever done is this part. I don't know if like K through 12, we were just trying to train like a generation of lawyers or something like that. Because all we've learned how to do is like make an argument paper. And you're thinking research is reading what other people have written and then making your argument. Basically swaying what other people have said to formulate into your opinion and why that's so important. That's what lawyers do. That's not what scientists do. For some reason, we've only been trained to like make arguments. But we're scientists. We're better than that. Nowhere in here has been any opinion so far, and when we do this in Module 2, there's not going to be any opinion. And a lot of you are probably like, well, when do I get to say what my thoughts are? Everybody in America got an opinion. Nobody knows anything but got an opinion about it. This should be easier. All we're doing is making sure we understood what everybody else said, understood what was in the data. You have no opinion of the data. No opinion. You just present what happened in the data. The only time you can put in your little 2 cents is really just in the conclusion, and it's not your opinion. You can only really just put in why should I care? That's the only part where like you comes through. The rest of the time you're just documenting what other people say and what does your data say. Now, so a lot of times lit review won't be written in that word lit review, but it is. A lot of times methods would be called like steps or like, here's another big problem. Actually, these 3 things are what your research is. Your research is not this. These 3 things, a lot of researchers, me included, kind of mesh all of this thing into one. And if you notice, I'm a little bit all over the place when I talk. I am when I write too, and it kind of just, all this can kind of just go back and forth. Like, oh yeah, and then there's this, and then I go back over to here. Kind of like Pulp Fiction or something like that. You don't know which one or anything. But like the data might be written as results or like findings or something like that. Conclusions, they might say conclusions. They might say discussion though. They might say significance. Usually conclusions are discussion usually. But even if it's not written this way, these sections are in there. And what we need to do is learn how to pull, when we read something, find out to fill in these spaces. We need to fill this in. Probably you've been assigned articles and didn't really get much out of it. Thought it was boring, didn't know really what was the point of it, what was going on in it, and kind of just like pretended you had something to say. Like, well, I didn't know what happened, but I'll go to class and talk about this little part in here. And you get to class and it'd be like, well, I guess I completely misunderstood what this part was anyway. Only one person? I'm willing to bet most of us. But here, we're going to learn the Derek Scott method. Because I, at one time, was on that side of the room. And I didn't know how to read these articles. All through undergrad, you never really learned, things all through school, you never really learned how to read nonfiction. The only nonfiction you're exposed to is like biographies or something like that. But outside of that, we never really learned how to read information. And that's nothing in science is going to be a story. It's information, and we're trying to pull out what is important in there. So this is why you can go through articles with the Derek Scott method. You can get everything that's important in there. Even a long article, 20 minutes maybe, 30 minutes at most in an article. If you just know, so somewhere in here, right, so part one, right there, clear as ever. We're just going to write down these words, and then we're just filling in the blanks. So the first thing, if we know what we're looking for in the lit review, this is just what other people have written. We don't need to memorize or take notes on that much significance. Just get the point of what did everybody else have to say about this topic. They're doing a topic about, well, the first article we're doing is about food deserts. There's an article about food deserts. We don't need to know every study that they study. You understand? Here's the hard part. I'm going to use the word lit review to talk about a singular article, but I'm also going to talk about it in terms of that's what we're creating. See? This article, say, on food deserts, that author read, like, say, 50 different articles. What was important in those articles was the methods, data, conclusion. So this author, say, took 50, 100 articles and documented the methods, data, and conclusion of them and formulated it into their lit review of all the other studies that happened. So once you get that this is not really what we need to understand so importantly. We need to read it to get the gist of what all is happening within this field of, say, food deserts for this first one. But we don't ever cite or document what happens in somebody else's lit review. When we read, we're forming our own lit review out of what happens in this study. So what did they set out to do? What were the results of the data? And what can we conclude? Me, you know I love bullet points. I hate that, especially when I'm reading students' work. I don't want to get lost in the fluff of a paragraph because I said to make it 2 pages and you're trying to figure out how to make it 2 pages. That's the work. Bullet points. Let's start from the top. So this is Module 2. Module 2. See how I go all over the place? Now we're back. If this is Pulp Fiction, we're back at the beginning of the movie. You guys probably didn't. You weren't even born when Pulp Fiction came out. That was 25-ish. I don't know how long ago. Changed the game. Game changer. Anyway. Module 1, we learned about data and methods. Module 2, we're learning about how to read articles and create a lit review. So, and then once we've known how to do this, now we can do our own study. We know how to read articles and find out what everybody else has to say about it, and we can get data and formulate our own thing. Put it all together, and we have a research project. So, in these articles, these are going to be the same directions for articles 1 and 2, as well as the third one, and the articles we do in our poster that we create. So, we need to become experts in navigating the FIU online library system. Do you know how to use that library system real good to find articles? A lot of silence in the room. For those watching, they don't even know. There's like 50 people in this room, and they can't even see it. They think they hear all this quiet, and they think I'm just talking to myself. At least 50 people in here. No. They don't know. So every year our school spends a lot of money to subscribe to these journal articles. How much money? Roughly, for both of them. We'll keep it clean for recording today. How much do you pay in student fees? I think it's $500 per semester, somewhere in that neighborhood. Right. So 55, that doesn't, and you take 1 credit or you take 20 credits, you pay student fees. 55,000 students. If 55,000 students paid $1, that'd be $55,000. They paid $10, that'd be $500,000. They paid $100 a year, that'd be $5 million. But they're paying $1,000 a year, that's $50 million. To go to what? You just spent $50 million and you don't know where it went? Huh? That's different. That's athlete fees. There's different fees. There's like parking fee, student fee. We spend millions of dollars every year for these journals. We spend a whole millions of dollars to have student events that, like the one we had yesterday. It was wonderful, well worth the $50 million. Remember, I've been talking about it for all of February.
I missed it.
Yeah. So it goes to all of these different. It funds CSO. It funds all of our journal peer-reviewed journals. We are Research One University. I think I've explained what that means before. But to be a Research One University and to keep on at that level of research, we need to know everything that's going on so that our people we're training can have access to all the studies that's happening. So you ever like trying to looking for an article and it says, okay, to download this article, it's going to cost like $20 because you're not logged into the library. If you're logged into the library, you get it for free. That's for each article. Think about all the journals. We spend like a significant amount of that $50 million to just go into journals. A lot of millions. So how often do you use it?
Psychology majors use it.
Okay, good. So every year school spends this money. We all have access and need to learn how to search the database. Let me tell you how evil Google is. If you're signed into the library, Google knows that. Google knows everything. But this is the good part. Our library search engine is terrible. Scholar.google is great. Not only is it so good, it's easier to find an article you're looking for, but if you're not looking for a specific article and are just looking at articles on a given subject, oh my God, it's so much easier to look at scholar.google because it'll pull up the article, like say you just put food deserts. It'll pull up, millions of articles, every article will come up, and then they'll have on there people who have cited this article. So you can go, so if you get an article from like the 90s, you can see it was cited by all of these different people, and you can look at those articles and see where this goes. It can just take you down this long trajectory and end up with, what you were thinking you wanted. I personally think the Google search is a lot better than the library search. But I also said I think Blackboard sucks. I think I said that on the first day of school. If Google ran Blackboard, oh my God, we could be like the Jetsons out here. You don't know the Jetsons either.
Yeah.
That's too old. So, reading articles is difficult until you learn the Derek Scott method. The purpose of these 3 article assignments is to learn how to read and extract what is significant in the article and how to build our own lit review. If you read a journal article, there are at least 50 references that go into just a few pages of writing. You look at the back of the article in the references. There's all of this stuff, but you don't even see that many citations. That's just the document of everything that this author has read about this subject kind of thing. So the lit review is a summary of all of the studies, all of the articles published about this topic. Like I said, we're just going to write down these sections. Oh, one thing really important for our stage in the game, the flaws and the future is important. Other people might not do it, but for us right here, when I say flaws, it's not flaws like, I don't know, like it was ill-conceived or something. Flaws like, we're doing human studies. You can't account for everything. What would you account for? How would you do it? What did they not think of? Did they not factor in? So the first article we read is about food deserts in New York. And it's short, it's easy, it's very clear what the data is that they use, what their methods are, and what the conclusions are. Very clear. And not only is it clear, I think everybody in this room could probably publish an article just like this. All they do is use census. So in their lit review, they determine everybody's saying food deserts exist in these kind of neighborhoods with this kind of demographic, and food options happen in this kind of place. So they look at census, they make little census maps and determine in New York, I think it's somewhere in Brooklyn, like it's not Bed-Stuy, and that's like the only thing I know in Brooklyn. There's some other place. And then in like the Upper East Side is like the good part they talk about. So they use census to locate these areas, and then they just go into like stores and bodegas and grocery stores in these areas and compare what is on the shelves to see what the food that people have access to in these type of neighborhoods, to see how is New York City measuring, how can we measure food access in New York City. It is simple. It is clear to the point. It's not like one of these articles. Some of you are probably anth majors, and I'm not dissing anthropology, but some of those papers go on and on forever, and you just kind of get dizzy from the beginning to the end and wonder, wait, where am I going? When did I start off? How did I end up here? And I don't even know these words. Right.
Yeah.
I'm not dissing anth, but I don't know it because I do diss anth a lot. That I was in the anth major as an undergrad, but I wasn't cultural anth. I was bioanthropology, genetics, stuff like that. Basically human evolution. Those cultural anthropology papers, though, I get so lost in them. And even at 42 with a PhD, sometimes I do that, revert back to being an undergrad and be like, well, let me just find something in here I can talk about. I don't really know what happened in here. I'm kidding. So in future and flaws, we want to just see what would you do? So we read this one about New York. How would you try to replicate the same study in Miami? You know a little bit. At least. You eat, right? You live here, right? Is access to food the same everywhere? So you can just come up with some rubric for measuring the difference in access to food. So we make these sections. Just like, let me just do them right now. Let's say citation, abstract, lit review, conclusion, future/laws. So you write down these things on a piece of paper, then we're just filling in the blanks. This is why coming out with what happens in an article does not take that long. So at the top of the page, next to citation, you write down everything that would go into a citation of this article. Today's programs will put it into any format it needs to be automatically. That seems clear enough, but it's not. Students ask questions and I just look at them and I try my hardest to just be genuine and be like, oh, interesting question. Okay, so let me answer that clearer. But students will read that and say, okay, what format do you want it in? I'm like, wow, I wrote 2 sentences and I said, don't put it in any format. Because the program will put it in any format you want. Just write that. What goes into a citation? Literally, I'm asking you, what goes into a citation? The author.
The source.
No. Yeah, exactly. So you know what goes into a citation. So just put it there. Just have it at the top of the page. So now you'll have it anytime going forward in the future. Next thing you want to do is just copy paste that abstract and plug it right into that next line. So we have the citation, then we have the abstract. You know what else students have done for number 2, the citation? I kid you not. What did they do? They went to the back of the article, grabbed all the references, and copy-pasted it to the top of the page. And they're like, I don't know why, but, I did it. Did I get an A? And I'm like, I don't know why you did that either. What the hell? Do you not know what we're doing here? So that's happened before. So don't let me make fun of you next semester. Please don't do that. All right, so we copy paste the abstract. Now we're going to just take the lit review of the article that we're reading, and just summarize that. What is this author setting up? No. This is a little odd because the author is actually summarizing what others have written in their lit review, and now you're summarizing the author's summary. But we just want to get it just, what is the background? Basically, eventually we're going to do a poster about school performance, as it relates to race and as it relates to poverty. People have said this, people have said that. You just want to put forth the main arguments. You can be poor, some schools can perform good. These are the kind of conditions that happen. In general, the schools with a high amount of low-income people are going to be low performance. Schools with a large amount of black and Latin, there's like a threshold. Once it gets over like 45% or something of black and Latin, they're going to be low-performing high schools. In general, it's something around there. I don't know what the exact number is. That's in general what other people have said. So we're not like trying to write down like the specific facts are not important when we're summarizing lit review, but just in general to get a gist of what is this author is coming out with this framework of finding out what everybody's saying and then putting a study somewhere in to find these results based on what these methods are. So summarize what you're doing to get a background what the topic is and the key points and theories about this topic. This should be about 3 or 4 paragraphs, maybe more, maybe less. This first article, it's not going to be 3 or 4 paragraphs, though. Because this first article, the whole lit review is 3 or 4 paragraphs. So this one might be a paragraph. The methods. What is the author setting out to do? Where is the void? Methods, data, and conclusion is what the study is. This is what research is. And it's odd because this is what I said. From K through 12 all the way up until today, you've probably been calling research this part, the lit review. But this is not what the research is. This is a research study, is when you are designing a study, You get the data for it, and now you're drawing conclusions. These are the only three things that really matter when you read the article. So in the methods, what the author is doing is finding a void in all this literature. So you read all this stuff about food deserts, but none of the articles you read talk about the growth of, what do you call these things? Food market. No, what's the thing be like on one day a week in different neighborhoods? Farmers markets in low-income neighborhoods. They've been really doing well. Farmers markets have been blowing up. It used to really just be an upper-class white thing, but now farmers markets are everywhere. Well, it probably is in the literature now. But let's just say it's not in the literature. So now you want to look at food deserts, and as a way of combating food deserts, a lot of neighborhoods are having more farmers markets there. So where is the void in the literature? So this author might have found, you as an author might have found that, and that's what your study is. All this stuff about food deserts doesn't want to talk about that. So this should be, when you're writing about the methods of this thing, it should be a long paragraph, but in the future, after this class, you might find it easier to combine methods with the data section. Not today, not this semester, but one day in the future, you might be good enough where you could just combine the two and not get confused. But for right now, we want to separate methods from the data. I typically do that. Methods is what you're going to do with the data. You compile to answer the question, and then the data is what you're finding in it. The question is in quotes because even that can be murky and hard to define. See, back in like high school at some point, they said, research starts out with a question, and then you formulate a thesis. No, it doesn't. Nobody does that. Don't start off with a question. You start off really with this thing, the void. You see what other people have written, you see what data is available, and you design a study in there. And the question is just like, is there a food desert? I don't know. Like, the question is not like this profound thing that you're just on a quest to answer. They make it seem like this noble scientist who just has this burning question inside of them, and they're just trying to figure it out. No, they're not. That's not how it really happens. In the data section, we're going to use bullet points and state every piece of data that was used and what was done with it and what is significant in the finding. Now, every piece of data does not mean every row of a data table. It means what is in this table, what is in that one. I give you a hint. In this first article, they use census and they go in and they take notes of stores, what products are available in them. That's the data they use. But they're going to do cool things with it and come up with some significant findings within there. That's what we need to document. So those bullet points, maybe we're going to have like 10 bullet points under data. The conclusions is a little bit anticlimactic because really this is the biggest part of any paper. The conclusions, you think, I said from day one, the conclusions are not the most important thing. Remember back in day one when I was like, what's the best public schools in Florida or something like that? We said UF, then FSU. Right, that's the conclusion. The method and the data was the most important part in there because we decided if you wanted to study law, it turns out FIU is better than University of Miami. If you wanted to study, remember this thing? What I'm talking about? Doesn't matter. Go back and listen to my old videos. So the bullet point, the conclusion as well. Typically, authors are giving the results of the data in the context of what other people have written, the lit review. The author, and soon you, is finally giving their perspective on why it is important. But it's still not exactly argument paper. It's just, why is this significant? Why should I care? You're putting our conclusions from our results from the data in the context of what other people have written. Other people wrote that, low-income students and Latin and Black students are going to be low-performing, and in general, we find this trend in Miami, but there are these other things that make Miami a unique case study. Like there's a significant, this is not the low-income Latin immigrants that we see in the rest of the country. The Black population is also a much higher immigrant population. It's probably playing a role in it. So we're coming out with different results than we find as the trend across the country, but in general, we see the same kind of results. So the future and flaws, no study is perfect. What is missing, what is not accounted for. If you were going to design a study like this, what steps would you take? Data, interviews, area of study. Would you talk to other people? Would you talk to, like in this first article we're going to read, they don't talk to anybody. Maybe they could have talked to some people in the bodega and said, what kind of products would you like to see in your neighborhood? Maybe they could have talked to the person in the nice Whole Foods store on the Upper East Side and asked them, would you like to have bulletproof glass at your local convenience store? I said that yesterday. None of my students knew what the hell I meant either. Our department, GSS department, is pretty big on food in that there's multiple faculty members that are in the food. Kincaid, Hollander, probably others.
Carter.
Yeah?
With agriculture.
Mitzi? Carter? Okay, yeah. Okay, her. Maybe some others. Just grad students. Probably about a quarter of grad students have done their dissertation on something to do with access to food or local food markets or agriculture. And then even undergrads have done the same thing. If you go around the halls of GSS, you'll see just that. You'll see some posters of undergrad work and it has to do with food. I am not a food researcher necessarily. I just kind of mess with data on whatever it is, but I focus more on like housing and access, right to housing kind of issues. This is obesity. Perfect. This one, race. Right. This is white, this is black, this is somewhat mixed. This is white, this is somewhat mixed, this is black. This is obesity and the black map look very much the same. Bringing up DC because I actually contributed, before I even got a PhD, I contributed to something there in DC. I worked for a council member who later became the mayor, Adrian Fenty. Can't stand his ass, but I did work for him at one time and we were buddies. So, this is the problem of most cities, that the low income and the black areas do not have access to food the same way other neighborhoods do. So, there's DC, if you've ever been there, there's a huge park. It's called Rock Creek Park. It goes the whole top to bottom of the city, separating white DC from everything else. So this is where Georgetown is, American University, Sidwell Friends, all like the things that are nice and white in DC, over on this side. This is middle class black and some mixed in there. And then there's another river that people never talk about. It's called the Anacostia River. And east of the Anacostia River is wonderful and great, but it is the low income, 99% black part of DC. There was no grocery store east of the river, and it's 25% of the population. Literally, 1/4 of the population lived east of the river. There was no grocery store. There was no sit-down restaurant. This is where I lost people. The only food that people had access to east of the river was like cheap Chinese takeouts that have the bulletproof glass, and they have a spindle. You put your money in there, and it spins around. They take the money out, put the food in there, and then spin it back around. They'd be like, "Need more ketchup, man?" And everybody's like, "Wait, what do you mean there's bulletproof glass at this food place?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure they got it here. I just don't know it because I moved here and had a job, and I live in Coconut Grove. I don't live in Liberty City or something like that. But in D.C., I live east of the river, and that's what life is like. There was no grocery store. There was no sit-down restaurant. There's only takeouts with bulletproof glass. And some of the black establishments don't have bulletproof glass, but definitely the people who don't, the business owners who aren't from the neighborhood, and all of the Chinese places that I don't think are even Chinese, I think they're actually Korean, they all have bulletproof glass. So the city tried to initiate something because of the obesity rates in DC to say, well, let's give tax breaks to any businesses, food businesses that want to open up in this underserved community. And so just like here in Miami, you got Publix and Winn-Dixie, and then you got these other places. In DC, there's Safeway and Giant, and then there's some other crappy places. So there was actually a place called Murray's, which is kind of like a grocery store, but it's more like Save-A-Lot. And only one person in here shops at Save-A-Lot.
Black people? Well, I know. But black people know what Save-A-Lot is.
Yeah. So even though I made it, and I live in Coconut Grove, I go to Save-A-Lot and get like spices. You know, spices are expensive. I stock up on some spices from Save-A-Lot. And you get like a bag of cumin for like $5. Like a 1 pound bag of cumin somehow is like, yeah. Anyway, so there's a place, Murray's, and you go in there and it just smell like cat litter, and they don't have no produce in there. And, you know, that's what it smells like. It's not me. That's objective truth. So anyway, so I help by like making a map and like trying to make a survey, and it's not like I did it, you know. I just helped the mayor wanted some maps to go present at the chambers and all this stuff. But so they opened up one. Safeway opened, and then holy cow, was that the busiest Safeway in all of DC? Why? Because the people there wanted food, they just couldn't get the food. So once they opened up one, it was packed nonstop. It was the busiest one in all of DC. So now there's like it's either 2 Safeways and 1 Giant, or 2 Giants and 1 Safeway east of the river. There's now sit-down restaurants, a few of them. Sit-down restaurants, meaning you don't get your food and goes like McDonald's is not a sit-down restaurant. Sit-down restaurant can be crappy, but if it's got salt and pepper on the table and they bring you your food, that's a sit-down restaurant. So now there's sit-down restaurants east of the river. And we save the day. And it's even a whole, an organic market. We see most people, like not here. Here, everybody has a car, it seems like, but in other cities in the Northeast, people don't necessarily have cars. So, but people also, even though this is the low-income black part, people still have, household income is greater there than it is in Miami. So people will buy bringing fresh meat and fresh produce. It's just a pain in the ass to take the bus all the way into Capitol Hill and to get your groceries and get back on the bus or something like that. And there is a train, and it goes like this and like this. So if you live there, you're going to have to take the train and then get on the bus. It's just a real headache. And so people are like, well, I guess I'll just, you know, eat French fries and fried chicken from the corner takeout in the back of bulletproof glass, which I think affects the food that you eat also, at least mentally. So it's just a pain to get your food to go over there and then come back. So when they opened it up, it's just been blossoming. And even, like I said, the organic market opened up, and that place is like doing so well. I mean, I guess they're also making money because they don't have to pay taxes because they're opening up in an underserved community. At the same time, they're making a ton of money. And it's probably a lot of people in here, and especially a lot of people in business, weren't really thinking. They think of like health food stuff as being like a yoga, upper class white mom type of thing. But it's not. It's definitely going back to like alternative black consciousness has been into like health food. Like the Panthers were like anti-pork and making like healthy food for the people. Rastas are always vegan. The Muslims sell like bean pies and don't eat like the part of like black consciousness has always been this health thing. So when the health food store opened, that place was packed nonstop with like supplements and all kinds of just meat alternatives. So anyway, like this, so this is my experience with food deserts. What I'm getting at, and food deserts are real, and we can do things about it. And just to say, like, I was a little shocked, like, holy cow! It's not like I was. It's just when I was like your age and I did this, I was just part of the team. I happened to work for Angie and Fenty, and I knew how to make maps and made some maps. And I was like, but I lived over here, and I was like, holy shit! When the stores opened, I couldn't believe like what I worked on actually affected policy. Really changed my whole perspective about like what I could be doing and grad school and stuff like that. So. All right. You notice anything funny that's happening in this map?
A lot of public rich.
Certainly, you've noticed this just in terms of which exits not to get off on the highway. Is that like this side of US 1 is black. From here all the way up to like West Palm Beach. Between 95 and the Turnpike is black. On the other west of the Turnpike, between the Turnpike and the Everglades, is kind of just like suburban dream of America or something like that. Like gated communities and race doesn't matter anymore and it's just mixed and everybody's nice. But in between the Turnpike and 95 is the black part of Miami, Broward, even Palm Beach. It goes all the way up. So there's Publix in Hialeah, there's Publix on Biscayne, but there's no Publix right in there. So, what is a food desert? Food desert is places, first the places that do not have access to what we would call healthy food options. They'll just, so people, here is odd because there are some Winn-Dixies like way up there, and then there's like those crappy stores that I said, Murray's in DC, but here there's like, I don't know, some other thing. Maybe it's Save-A-Lot, but I don't even know if it's a Save-A-Lot. I don't really be over here like that. I'm over here Public Road. But I would say Miami is a funny place because a food desert has to do with distance. We use the word access to mean distance. And this is from here to here. It's not that far. If you're even in Overtown for Miami, we would definitely call it food desert. But Overtown is right there. You're surrounded by food, actually, if you live in Overtown. But there's Miami has these invisible walls, these invisible lines, and signs on places that let it be known this is not for you. So, I don't know, when I go, I've been into like this Publix, and there's a Whole Foods over here, there's a Publix right there, right next to Overtown. Like, this is actually Overtown. It's right next to Overtown. And I saw the invisible sign on the wall when you enter that Publix. And it's like, people from Overtown, you're not supposed to shop here, but you can apply for a job here. You see that sign? No? It's invisible. What's wrong with y'all? It's invisible. There's this, like, people live here, but they just know that this is not for them. Biscayne, they will be bothered by the police if there's too many black youths on Biscayne. If they're shopping in this Publix, they will be followed. They're not supposed to be there. There's Publix Sabor, right across the street from here. And it's not just one general Latin thing. They'll look at who shops at this Publix and cater to that population of what country are they from. So I'll give you an example. This is Little Haiti, and there's a Publix right there. And that Publix is not catering to Little Haiti. They're catering to Morningside and all of this population that lives east of Biscayne. There is not any Haitian products in that Publix. And it's not, that's what I mean. There's a sign that saying, this isn't for you. We didn't go out of our way for anything for you in here. And we are in your neighborhood. It's like right in back of them, and they really straight up got their back turned to them, and it's just looking over at Biscayne and Morningside and saying, yeah, we got all these nice products in here for you. There's a lot of hipsters over there, and they even have like the beeswax so the guys can make their little mustaches do this funny thing. Yeah. So Miami is an odd thing though, because it's not the distance, it's that it is so heavily segregated by these invisible lines and people just know not to go over to certain places. I was really bothered. One time somebody was doing a dissertation from the University of Miami on people in Liberty City that have never been to the beach. And at first I was like, oh, that's an interesting topic. But the more this person talked, I was like, shut up, man. I got money, I don't go to the beach. It's not, I hate the beach. It's annoying. You get sand on you, you can't escape the sun, you go in the water and the salt dries on you, it feels all weird. I don't like the beach. But the whole premise of the whole dissertation was that oh, the beach is wonderful, it means freedom, and people here aren't free. And I was like, yeah, it was a white person, so I hated everything about that.
Yeah.
This idea this white person saying that. And I was like, will you shut the hell up? Like, don't ever say anything again about anything. I don't want to hear anything. But in general, it was kind of true that, historically, these people are not supposed to be here. They get 1 weekend a month. I think somebody, it's my other class, they said it. When they first moved here, they came to South with their family and went to South Beach on Memorial Day weekend. And I was like, oh my God, this is Miami.
No, 30 years ago, people had to, take up, little boats and, to one part of it.
Yeah. Virginia Key is the Black Beach.
Yeah.
It's actually, you don't know this, it's actually also a site of the Underground Railroad. You only hear about people Underground Railroad, people fleeing to Canada or Massachusetts. People fled to the Bahamas too. It wasn't just to get out of here north. First of all, this was all of South Florida was kind of just wild lands, but if you could get down here, you can make an escape. Go to the Bahamas. So, there is very little access. We were going to do some type of BMI type of study. Where do you think obesity is a problem? Probably right in this area that doesn't have any Publix. Because if you're not there and you know you're not supposed to be over here, you're going to eat what's in your neighborhood. And it's going to be really bad fried food, no fresh produce sections of your stores, no kale.
That's snappers.
I love snappers actually. That is, even though I said I made it, I just can't help it. I need fried fish with hot sauce and tartar sauce. This is what I do. You live in Fort Lauderdale.
I just moved there. There's snappers.
I know. I lived right over there by the snappers on Broward Boulevard. I lived off of Sistrunk. Yeah. That's just, I don't know. I need fried fish. That's what I do. But what's odd in Miami, I'm going to show you one of the richest parts of Miami. One of the richest parts. You probably don't even go here. I be over here all of this, Coco Plum. I got rich friends. We hang out at Coco Plum in big houses and yachts and stuff. I'm kidding. I've never been on a yacht. Or I've been to Coco Plum. You got this isn't a gated community. It's like a gated town. You enter a gate, it's off of Cutler Road. We're looking at it's even Cutler Road is some of the richest places in all of Dade County. But they're far from food. But that's on purpose. They don't want to be around it. They don't want people having access to. They want to be exclusive, and it's such an odd place.
I feel like it's that.
It's all the way over here. I'm saying it is hard. It takes a while in your car. You got to go out of the gate, drive all the way over. It's quite a to do. If you go to the store and then get back home, be like, forgot the salt. You might not even do it because it's just too damn far. You just might be, it doesn't need salt anyway. It's far to get from here and just zigzagging to get out of the community, and then come to, like it just takes a long time. So that's a little background about what a food desert is and access to food and healthy options. You know what else I've seen here in Dade County is that like I don't speak Spanish, but like I think I know what's going on. Like on Calle Ocho, in the real Little Havana, there'll be like a pickup truck that just came from like Homestead or something, and it got like produce in it, and people buy the produce from out the back of the truck. So it's not like it's like a wandering. What did we just say that word was? Farmers market. It's like a wandering farmers market. Like it's not just set up with like it is some type of informal economy that's happening in the Latin part of Miami, where they're coming with fresh fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, you see them off the side of the road.
That's what I mean. It's informal economy. It's legal is a funny word. I don't think they have a permit to sell it though. It's not an official farmers market, but I think they're getting stuff from like Homestead or somewhere not this urban, and then selling it out of a pickup truck. So like next to my house, I live on 32nd. Is actually like a place that's some guy actually it's like a little family. They always have fresh fruits. But I see trucks come. And then, like, make a stop here and sell things, and you see them, like, a few hours later on another street selling things out the back of a pickup truck. Informal economy. Is it legal? I don't know what illegal means when it comes to that, but I highly doubt they got a permit. Illegal to sell food in nature? Like, I don't know. It seems weird to say that. But, yeah, they probably could get in trouble. Like Eric Garner, selling a cigarette. Right, they don't want to hear about it now. All right. Next year, next February 1st, we'll start all over again. What else we have to say about food deserts? All right, that's enough background. So when you read this article, I really picked some easy article. Also on the bottom of the page, oops, wrong button. No, that is it. So I put the first two articles. The first one is this one about food deserts. The next one is about housing vouchers. Where? In D.C. happens to be. Another really easy article, though. And then the other, so this is over spring break also kind of, we're going to wrap all of this stuff up. So there'll be another article. As I said, in Module 2, we're going to have 3 articles, but we lost a week there. Remember? When you were gone for 2 weeks, Tamaya?
Oh, yeah. We're going to be doing research.
So we're going to take, in Module 3, we're going to have articles also. We're just going to take one of the articles from there and overlap it with the third article from Module 2. So we're going to read one less article. We're going to read 3 articles in Module 2 and then 3 in Module 3. But what we're going to do is just overlap that. So the first one in Module 3 is really the last one of Module 2. So instead of total 6 articles this semester, it'll really be 5. So I'll send you what that one is. When we get back from spring break, we want everything done. Next week, we're going to have a field work day. Elaborate?
No, we're going to the library.
Yeah, you go to the library. A research day. You're going to be doing field work.
For this class?
Yes.
Like at this time, we go to the library.
At this time, or whatever time you find most convenient for you.
Okay.
And you don't need to go to the actual library. You can look at the online library from the comforts of your home with your pajamas on.
So no class next week.
No. Here at FIU, we don't cancel classes.
Okay.
We have a field work day next week. We'll be doing research. This class is research methods. I am going to give you, by next week, I'll have given you all the articles. So I'll give you the first 2, and then I'm going to give you the third one, which will be about performance in poverty. Huh? What? No. You ask great questions.
No.
Okay, great. So I give you the third one, and between now and spring break, see, that's what you're doing next Thursday when we are doing field work. You'll be doing all of those other articles. Any other questions? We're good? Well, you have a wonderful spring break. Be good. Anybody going anywhere fun?
Yeah.
You say Kansas? What? Somebody going somewhere fun?